Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6 review videos, and today we're going to be talking the 6th episode, otherwise titled Inescapable. Now I suppose this episode could be referred to as a filler episode. I mean, it doesn't really advance the events of the season by so much. Actually, it does not advance the events of the season at all, in a manner of speaking, but nonetheless it was a very good episode, because if any series out there is expected to do a filler episode and do it well, it's Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now this episode did as well feel like a culmination of a trilogy of episodes. The first of this trilogy was 4,722 hours, and that was basically episode 5 out of season 3. You've also got the second episode in this trilogy, which was the 5th episode of the 5th season, otherwise known as Rewind. And finally, you've got this episode, season 6, episode 6, otherwise titled Inescapable. Now the entire thing as well, the setup of all 3 episodes put together kind of reminds me of the disappearance of Eleanor Rigby, starring James McAvoy and Jessica Chastain. The trilogy there was composed of 3 movies. The first one was her, the second one was him, and the third one was them. Not sure about the order of him and her, but nonetheless, what that trilogy was about was events from her perspective on the her movie, events from his perspective on the him movie, and a movie that's sort of like this episode, you know, events from both their perspectives. And interestingly enough, all those events have been mentioned on this episode, have been referenced on this episode. Another thing about this episode is it did have a lot of references to a lot of those events on previous seasons, with the 2 of them including those very 2 episodes, and funny enough they did as well sneak in a little bit of a Coulson Our Man reference in the middle of the episode. But before we dig deeper, I give this episode a 9 out of 10. Love me some Fitz Simmons on an episode. You know, the dynamic, the acting of these 2, that's really amazing. But okay, I did find it interesting that we did get a lot on both trailers for this season out of so many episodes. Usually trailers are about the first episode, the premiere of the season, maybe the first 2 episodes, but we're getting stuff that we did see on the first trailer of this season, like on the 6th episode. For example, we've got Jemma sleeping on the very first scene on that lit up floor. That's from the first trailer for this season. We've got the Jemma monster grabbing Fitz and running with him, you know, like phasing through realities, which is not really what people expected, you know, someone phasing through realities, but it is rather, and as we do find out on this episode, all happening in Fitz and Jemma's head. But alright though, there are multiple components to the events of this episode. One of the major components over here is the reunion at the very beginning. You know, Fitz wondering how she is here if she did travel 100 years into the future, which by the way wasn't really 100 years but rather 74 years. We've got Atara interfering, introducing herself, Fitz cutting her off. You know, you live near a star in the constellation known as Cygnus, which is basically the words of Enoch introducing himself to both Fitz and Hunter on episode 5 of season 5. That's basically our first reference to one of those solo episodes with Fitz and Simmons. But once on the scene, and on the stinger of the episode as well, we do get an explanation as to what happened to Chronica 2. So Chronica 2 was heated to a melting point, currently uninhabitable, totally destroyed. We know from last week that Atara wants to use time travel to go back in time to save it. Fitz over here is the very same old Fitz, you know, believing traveling back in time to bring change is paradoxical. He talks about it being against the laws, which is basically a little bit of a reference to the space-time episode out of season 3. You know, the stubbornness of Fitz when it comes to time travel and changing events out of the past or even out of the future. Now that is also the very same Fitz out of season 5, you know, kind of counting his steps when it comes to time travel and changing time. One moment believing it cannot be changed, and then the next moment thinking, okay, even if it were to be possible, the repercussions are going to be catastrophic. Now Jemma does agree with Fitz as well. You know, yeah, you've got no idea, it's quite paradoxical. Now this episode does explain what I've been talking about for weeks. You know, this Fitz is a paradox, and it's kind of clear why. And we know that the multiverse theory applies over here. We know that the Avengers Endgame time travel rules apply over here. So the moment that they changed things, they created a new timeline. Entering this new timeline, they had 2 versions of Fitz, 2 copies of Fitz in the new timeline, which back in the old timeline did exist, but one was past, one was present. In this case, they're 2 completely different versions with 2 completely different destinies. We've got the one that enters the new timeline alive and kicking and awake with the team back on Earth and ends up dead at the end of season 5, and we've got the other one that enters the new timeline sleeping in space, orbiting Jupiter, and that one is not going to meet the same destiny. That one is not gonna die at some point back in 2018. So yeah, two different versions of Fitz. One of them has got to be a paradox. It makes a lot of sense that this one is a paradox because the first one is part of creating the timeline, changing the timeline. He sacrificed himself in place of Mac and Polly, something that does not happen to him in the original timeline. And yeah, there is no arguing it. It's been clearly established on this episode, even if not in so many words. I mean, we gotta read between the lines. So yeah, clearly established. Let's not argue that. But moving on though, the machine they were held in kind of felt like a Trooper reference. For one thing, it felt like the Fear Dimension out of Season 5. It also felt like the Memory Machine from Season 1, with Coulson and Raina and whatnot. And finally, we've got the objective of the machine, which kind of makes it representative of the framework, because back on Season 4, Ada used the framework to create an alternate reality within the framework, but also to use the knowledge of Fitz within the framework in order to build herself a real body out there in the real world. Over here, we've got the parallel to the body that Ada wanted to build, represented in the time machine that Itara wants these two to help her build. But over here though, we've got Fitz proposing to Jemma for a second time. It's the first for this Fitz, the second for Jemma, even though the first time around she's not supposed to have heard it. However though, I'm pretty certain, having prepared the speech this romantic, Fitz probably repeated it to Jemma at some point. I mean, he wouldn't pass the opportunity. But yeah though, the fact that the speech is pretty similar, almost the same to the one that he gave Jemma on Season 5, proposing to her, when she couldn't hear him, that does tell us that he's always prepared it before he got into the pod, and it is also an obvious reference to Fun and Games, the 6th episode of the 5th season. And we get to see the time travel monolith, the white monolith manifest, which is basically a reference to Season 5. We get to see Jemma trying her best to avoid telling Fitz all about what happened to him, which is basically all about his death at the end of Season 5. We get Fitz using his smarts a little bit to figure out what this is all about. This is not about our minds being the key to this prison. This is about our minds being the prison. Now from that point onwards, it all kind of starts unraveling. The events of the episode kind of start heating up. I can't believe the child on this episode was not actually a manifestation of their daughter, because Simmons knows about her, but rather that of Jemma's. I did find the entire thing funny and extremely weird, especially with Fitz trying to read her a bedtime story, trying to play the father to Jemma. That was a little bit weird, to be honest. We do see drawings in that book, drawings of Jemma, drawings of Daisy, drawings of what I think is either Mac or Daviiz. But nonetheless, the most important one of these is the reference to Fitz. The monkey that we see on one of those pages, one of those drawings, that's representative of Fitz, a reference to Fitz. Now Fitz flips through the book, closes the book, and it is the Darkhold, so we've got yet another reference to Ada, to Season 4, to the Darkhold, to the Ghost Rider arc, and of course the framework, a similar situation to the one they are in, and the framework was created using the Darkhold. But yet another reference to Ada and the LMD arc, Fitz threatening Simmons to get someone to help him, an LMD, maybe Ada, and we know how Simmons feels about Ada, so that basically does get her back to full size and the right age. Moving on though, Fitz's persistence on finding out what Jemma is hiding from him kinda triggers the memory within Simmons of the day that he died and that they retrieved his body. It's kinda devastating for Fitz, but what's more devastating is realizing that Coulson died. That seemed to be the straw that broke Fitz's back. But this entire scene though is about a reference to a lot of things out of Season 5 and a lot of realizations for Fitz. I mean, he realizes he died, that's out of the finale of the season. He realizes he's already proposed to Jemma, that's basically out of episode 6 of Season 5. He married her, that's out of episode 12, the 100th of the series. He realizes he missed his wedding and the death that so far stuck, the death of Coulson. Now we get a memory of the team getting ready to head out and get Fitz back from space. That didn't really ring any bells for me, didn't really do much for me. The next memory though, that's out of their school days together, the "you should see my room" and his okay and getting all flustered and whatnot, that tells us there was always a thing there. He's always felt this way about her. Maybe at some point he crushed on Daisy, he crushed on Ada, he crushed on someone or the other, but nonetheless, there was always a thing there. But this is also identified by Fitz as the night that they turned from classmates to actual friends, talking about being all comfortable around her since that night. We've also got a couple of references in that memory. The monkeys on the wall on that scene, Fitz's obsession with monkeys, is one reference, and the very same monkeys or monkey heads that he drew on the wall of his cell on Season 5's Rewind. We've got the Manchester United poster in his room, once again reminds us of the big argument with Hunter on Season 5's Rewind about Man U versus Liverpool. we've got a reference to his episode on Season 5, Season 5's The Devil Complex, him hearing and seeing the Doctor manifesting through him on that episode. We've actually got the Doctor manifesting, Leopold is coming. Someone wondered in the comments to last week's video why they got married, and she still referred to him as Fitz. For one thing, it is what everyone refers to him as, and for another thing, it is the name he went by in the framework as the Doctor, and the name Ada called him. But moving on, once again, we've got a reference to Rango when Fitz refers to the monster out of the music box, the Jemma monster, as the Rango monster. They end up in the lighthouse. Jemma tells him that's the new S.H.I.E.L.D. HQ. Jemma stating that S.H.I.E.L.D. is an awful acronym as he's about to relay it all, the full thing. That did feel like a quick reference to Coulson back on Iron Man, the whole thing with the full name and then the acronym. By the end of the movie, they jump to their memory of meeting Coulson for the first time, their awkwardness from way back in Season 1, having been always known as the duo, Fitz Simmons. Clark Gregg even pulled a little bit of that Season 1 Coulson, the extremely excited Coulson, the Tahiti, it's a magical place Coulson. Jemma, after that, trapped by the Doctor, put in that other machine that's gonna access her memories. That felt like she's about to get trapped in another dream layer, sort of like a dream within a dream, sort of like Inception. But bringing in the S.H.I.E.L.D. team into this dream space or memory space, that's basically all about the first step towards a resolution when it comes to Monster Jemma and Dr. Leopold. The next step is hiding in that containment unit. The containment unit brings back a lot of memories. It's the first time we've seen it since Season 4. But more importantly, using it to hide from the Doctor is a direct reference to Fitz and Piper using it to hide from Ada back on Season 4. Jemma torturing Fitz, by the way, before that was about the darkness inside her. She as well has evolved, by the way. Remember, the premiere, being party to torturing that alien. Yes, she had Daisy do the heavy lifting, but then again, she was right there. She was doing all the talking, doing all the threatening. We've got a lot of references to everything Fitz and Simmons, from Fitz's brain injury at the end of Season 1, Jemma going on a mission right after that, Season 2, that's pretty much when he tells her that she abandoned him. We've got Mavis, Jemma falling in love with Will ending up being Hive, and all of that is out of Season 3. We've got a reference to Fitz building a robot girlfriend, that's basically all about Ada in Season 4, him turning into a Nazi dictator, as in the framework, as in the Ages of Hydra arc. We've got Fitz referring to a framework version with Jemma in charge as something that would look like Night of the Living Dead, a reference to the movie with the same name. Jemma starts listing the many times Fitz saved her, a reference to him saving her in the future, that's Season 5, on Mavis, that's Season 3, and trapped at the bottom of the ocean, and that's pretty much the end of Season 1. We've got the very hilarious moment of Jemma and Fitz walking out of the containment unit, planning on facing off with the Doctor and Monster Jemma, only to realize that the two found each other appealing. That was most definitely a laugh-out-loud moment. But finally though, and before the stinger, Fitz Simmons do realize that they are better off not giving someone access to time travel again, causing yet another mess. Now Atara starts threatening them, and that moment almost finishes her threat, only Enoch interferes to save them, takes everyone out, escapes with Fitz and Simmons, and she reveals to Fitz, right before they escape, that he is a grandfather. The look on his face was priceless, waiting to see how he handles it, and how he deals with Deke when he ends up meeting him. Okay, the stinger of the episode, Mac and Daisy, they're talking to one another, talking about Fitz and Simmons. He's excited about Fitz being alive. There are 2 times on this episode that he referred to him as Turbo, once in the memory machine and the other one on that stinger. So yeah, a reference to the name that he's given him since Season 2, but nonetheless he does start talking to Daisy about it. He doesn't, by the way, tell her about Sarge looking exactly like Coulson, so that's gonna be a surprise for her on next week's episode. But he does give us the reveal that the footage that was all about Chronica 2, the planet that was wrecked, that was Chronica 2. But that being said though, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. It was my favorite this season, love me some Fitz Simmons. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, subscribing to this channel, and make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I upload a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this one, and have a great day.